we are back again on the Just a Little Bit Out West podcast with me, your host, Old Smith, and we're going to get a little bit out west today. So, this week we are going to be discussing the subject of the glory. This is a word that you hear, obviously. It's a word that talks about God, who is glory, has glory. And we're going to start in the book of Psalms, in the 84th chapter of Psalms. In the 11th verse it says, "For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly." Alright, so the word glory, God says that he gives glory. And we know from other scriptures that it talks about that his glory, in his glory, that he is glorious. So what does that actually mean? The Greek word for glory means dignity, honor, praise, and worship. And in the New Testament, it is a word that signifies being in an exalted state. This is sort of interesting because we just read this verse that says that God gives glory. So this kind of goes back to 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Remember, it said, "Humble yourself therefore under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you." Well, that's glory. So God gives us glory. That verse in Peter says that God gives glory to the humble. This is the thing about God that it blows my mind most of the time, but God takes these things and turns them on their head all the time. Just like it says that we labor to rest, he's saying he gives glory, he exalts the humble. Well, the humble is down here, and he lifts the humble up and puts him up here. Okay, so let me just rant for a second. This is that thing that people have a tendency to focus on, and I know why they do. It's because the devil promotes this attitude of giving yourself this idea that you're just a worm. Well, yeah, but God turns that worm into something that is exalted. God makes a worm into something that is beautiful and bright and exalted and having glory. I mean, this is the thing about God that so many people in so many churches miss, that God is not interested in leaving you as a worm. He wants to exalt you. And what we read there in Peter is that you are exalted by recognizing where you are, but he doesn't want you to stay where you are. This is another thing. I mean, God says come as you are, but he doesn't leave you as you are. He says come as you are, and I will make you into my son, my child, my friend. And if you focus on the worm part and don't recognize that God has exalted you and given you glory, then you're always going to just be a worm. And it seems, I mean, I know people have a tendency to feel like, well, I'm just being humble. Well, okay, but being humble is also saying what God says, and what God says is you are glorified. So yes, you should recognize that you're a worm, but then at some point you have to say, okay, I'm not a worm anymore because God has given me glory. Okay, so look over at the 2nd chapter of Luke, verse 8 through 10, and obviously you will recognize this from Christmas time. "There were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were afraid. And the angel said, Fear not, because I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. All right, so God's glory. This gives us a clue. God's glory is bright, and it shined all around them. So, kind of put this together with what we just talked about. If God's glory is bright, and it shines out, and we just read in Psalms that God gives glory, you're going to have to start seeing yourself a lot better than you do. You have a tendency, we all do, have a tendency to see ourselves as less than. And yet, if you can trust the Psalms, he said God gives us glory, and we're going to see that a lot more this week as we go through this. God is giving his glory to us. People have a tendency to focus on God's up there and we're down here, and yet God doesn't look at it like that. I mean, look, the entire purpose for creation and the Garden of Eden and putting Adam and Eve in there was for God to have a friend. He wasn't creating robots, and he wasn't creating puppets, and he wasn't creating servants. He already has those things. He doesn't need more of those things. He specifically created man to be something different. And if you've been listening to me very long, you know how I feel about that. This is why it's so hard for us to understand, because it doesn't seem like to us that we would reach down and find something that was worthless in most cases and then bring it up to our own level. Remember the story of David and Mephibosheth, and how David blessed Mephibosheth even though he was crippled. He couldn't work, he couldn't do anything, he couldn't even walk. And yet David gave him everything he could possibly want or need. And he said, you can live in my house, my castle, whatever you want to call it, and eat my food and wear my clothes. This is us. David gave Mephibosheth glory. All right, so we will come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the glory some more, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. All right, bye-bye.